Hi friends, hope all are safe at home. So we are going to start a new chapter, that is ecosystem. So I have started this chapter for one class, other class I have not yet, isn't it? So anyhow, this ecosystem, we will just go through what the chapter introduction is about. Okay. So ecosystem, you know what an ecosystem is? The global ecosystem, as you speak, biosphere, where you can find interaction between living and non-living. So then we call this system, that group system, we call it as what? Ecosystem. Okay. So where you can find the non-living factor, that is the abiotic factor, is interacting with the living factor, and they are coordinating each activities, functions, and they are staying in one particular area. So that area we call it as what? We call them as ecosystem. Clear? So you can see ecosystem is a functional unit of nature where living organisms interact with each other. Okay, they are interacting with each other. I am dependent on plants, the plants are dependent on me. Okay, so like that we are interacting with each other. Along with that, when you see, we are also interacting with the physical environment, that is the abiotic factor. The sunlight, water, air, everything we are interacting, soil, all, etc., isn't it? So this is what we call it as what? We call them as ecosystem. Clear? Now, what are the different types of ecosystem? When you are moving into the types of ecosystem, you can divide the ecosystem into two types. Okay, so the first one is natural, which is already present in nature, and the second one is your aquatic ecosystem. Okay, so one is natural and another one is not aquatic, artificial. Okay, so an artificial can also be called as what? Man-made. Clear? So this natural, when you see, it can be divided into two again. One is terrestrial and another one is aquatic. Terrestrial means what? It is the land. And what do you mean by aquatic? Aquatic means it is the water bodies. Okay. So terrestrial ecosystem, when it comes, as you see the slide, you can find forest, grassland, desert, semi-arid regions are all examples of what? All examples of terrestrial ecosystem. And when it moves to aquatic, there are again two ways are there. One is the freshwater ecosystem and another one is a marine or saltwater ecosystem. In freshwater ecosystem, when you are saying, you are having pond, lakes, streams are coming under which one? The freshwater ecosystem. And when you are moving on to the salt water, you can find the ocean, the seas, then you can find the estuaries. What is estuary? Where the river and the sea meets, that place we call it as what? We call them as estuaries. It is salty in nature, right? So that is saltwater ecosystem. Then you are having which one? Saltwater ecosystem, wetlands, you know, where the always the water is getting saturated, like mangroves and all, where you can find Sundarbans and all, you can find there it is wetlands. So always you can find the sea water has covered some of the area of the land, and there always water is present. Okay, so those places we call it as what? Wetlands. So these are all examples for aquatic ecosystem. Now moving on to the man-made ecosystem. What are man-made ecosystem? I am creating it. It's not present in the nature. Like crop fields, if I am developing a crop field, I am having a paddy field of acres, so that is artificially created by me, but it is an ecosystem because you can find a lot of plants, lot of insects, lot of birds, everything prevailing over there, and they are interacting with the abiotic factors, right? So crop fields is an example for what? Example for man-made ecosystem. Aquarium is an example for what? Man-made ecosystem. Botanical garden, when you are seeing, it's an zoological parks are all examples for what? A ecosystem wherein you can find we are making it, and there you can find interaction between the living and non-living things. Okay, so these are all man-made ecosystem, or we call them as artificial ecosystem. Okay, with this the type is over. Now we are moving on to the other topics, that is, I have already told you, biosphere is called as what? The global ecosystem. Biosphere is referred to as, biosphere means what? Wherever life is present on the earth, the whole comes under the common category called as what? Biosphere, and it is a global ecosystem. The whole earth is an ecosystem, combined thing, it is an ecosystem. I can divide them into many small parts, but entire world, when you are seeing, it's global ecosystem. Wherever life is there, they are coming under what? Ecosystem, called as what? Biosphere. Okay, in an ecosystem, you know, abiotic and biotic factors are interacting. Now we are going to learn a term called as stratification. So what is stratification? So you can see, the students, you can see the layers of the different layers of the forest, isn't it? So in the diagram you can see, at the bottom what is given, it is the ground layer. Then you can find shrub, then you can find understory layer, then you can find canopy, then you can find emergent. So here when you are seeing, as you go from bottom to the top, same species are not there. What is found in the ground layer, those species cannot be found in shrub layer. What is found in the shrub layer, you cannot find it in understory. What trees are found in the understory is not present in canopy, and what trees are found in canopy are not present in emergent. Everywhere you can find different types of species because they need different solar radiation, they need different what is that, temperature effect and all, because based on that only they will be growing, isn't it? So different layers of these ecosystem, we call them as stratification. What do we call them? Stratification. So these are the layers. So the first layer, second layer, third layer, fourth layer, like that many layers are there. As you go from bottom to top, you have many layers, and in each and every layer there are different types of species is being placed in those layers. Okay, so those layers we call it as what? Stratification. Vertical distribution of flora and fauna at different layers, we call it as what? Stratification. You can see here of species, vertical distribution of different species occupying different level is called as what? Stratification. Example for stratification is, in a forest, tree occupy the top strata, the bigger one. Thereafter you can find what? You are having the shrubs a bit less in height, and thereafter you are having more the smaller ones, which is the herbs and the grasses are occupying the least, isn't it? So this is what? The different stratification. So vertically how they are being distributed. So that one we call it as what? Stratification. It's a one word question, you can get it, so be prepared for the same. Now we are moving as pond as an ecosystem. Okay, how can pond be considered as a self-sustainable ecosystem? Okay, so in the pond, you know, there is water, there is soil deposits, everything. There are separate climatic factors like you have solar energy being, some of the layers are getting direct exposure, some diffused sunlight in region, some places no sunlight is there. So solar energy is there, temperature they are regulating. Day length also means how long the sunlight will be there, depends, isn't it? So these are climatic conditions which determines the organism which are going to stay in the pond ecosystem. Okay, then there are autotrophic component. What do you mean by autotrophs? You have already learned. The one who can make their own food, we call it as what? We call them as autotrophs, right? So these autotrophic components are also coming under what? Solar, one of the component of what? The pond ecosystem, clear? And in autotrophic there may be floating plants, phytoplanktons, or some algae will be there which is floating. Some plants will be submerged, some plants will be rooted beside and all, you can find on the what is the banks, near the banks and all, you can find those plants, marginal plants we call it as. Okay, so these all plants are also forming what? The autotrophic components. Now moving on to consumers. Consumer means what? The heterotrophs, those who depend on plants directly or indirectly for food, we call it as what? Heterotrophs. So zooplanktons, free swimming animals, thereafter bottom dwelling animals, okay, some crustaceans, all are coming under which one? They are coming under consumers. And other one is there every time present, that is the decomposers. When all these organisms die, or their debris or the waste materials are being eaten up by whom? The decomposers. Okay, bacteria, fungi, you have many protozoans, all these coming under what? They are all coming under decomposers, clear? So in a pond ecosystem you can find a life which is sustaining themselves, and there is interaction between biotic and abiotic, because without sunlight food is not possible, without water food is not possible, without chlorophyll you cannot have food, and without proper temperature also making of food is a problem, isn't it? We have learned what are the factors which are affecting photosynthesis. So all these abiotic factors is playing a major role in controlling what? The biotic factors. And if plants are not there, consumers cannot be there. If both are not there, decomposers don't have food, isn't it? So they are all forming a link, and it's very important for everyone to be present in order to survive, clear? So that is what? A pond ecosystem. Now we are moving on to the functions of an ecosystem. Pond performs what and all they are saying. You see, autotrophs convert inorganic food into organic material through photosynthesis, that is solar energy. Heterotrophs are consuming the autotrophs. Decomposers, when you are seeing, they are decomposing, and minerals are put back into the water as well as the soil, which can be taken by plants again for photosynthesis, and the cycle continues. Okay, so this is regarding your pond ecosystem. Hope so it's clear. I don't think any doubt is there. Now we are moving on to the 4 basic components of ecosystem, very important. Okay, so these were all general ideas only. I think most probably question may not peep in much, but from here we are moving into the chapter So what are the basic components of an ecosystem? 4 components are there. So what are the 4 components? The first component is productivity. The second component is decomposition. The third component is energy flow, and the fourth component is nutrient cycling. Okay, so I can go in a proper order. One, I can go for productivity, then we can go for energy flow, third we can go for decomposition, and the fourth we can go for nutrient cycling. I will explain, listen carefully how it is taking. What is productivity? Productivity means the plants are making the food, isn't it? So plant, when it is making the fruit to produce photosynthesis, so that topic we call it as what? We call them as productivity. Making of food, making of a product. So what is the product there? Food is the product, and who is the one who is mainly producing it? It is the plants. Okay, so that one we call it as productivity. Productivity, clear? So to some extent animals are also making, that in detail we will be discussing. So productivity means how much amount of biomass is being produced by living organism. That one we call it as what? We call them as productivity. Okay, now the plants are making food in a food chain. Imagine the plants are making food, the food is transferred, like for example grass is making food, the grass is being eaten by grasshopper, the grasshopper is being eaten by a frog, frog is being eaten by snake, snake is being eaten by eagle. Now we can find what is taking place. The food which is present, which was produced in the plants by taking the energy of the sun, the photon energy, isn't it? Sunlight's energy. The food, light energy was converted into chemical energy of food and is being stored in the plants, is getting transferred from one trophic level to another. So, कहाँ से जा रहा है? ग्रास से ग्रासहोपर में जा रहा है एनर्जी, उसके बाद वहाँ से जा रहा है तुम्हारा फ्रॉग के पास, उसके बाद स्नेक के पास, स्नेक से वल्चर या ईगल के पास जा रहा है. So what is happening? Energy transfer is taking place. So this one we call it as energy flow. What do we call them? Energy flow. Now when this plants, consumers, everyone is dying, the next process takes place, that is called as what? Decomposition. Okay, so when decomposition is taking place, you can find what is happening. All these plant materials, the animal debris, dead parts are being decomposed, is being eaten up by whom? The decomposers. The bacteria and fungi are decomposing. Earthworm, everyone is helping in what? Decomposing them, and at last what is happening is that they are, by through decomposition, they are helping in what? Nutrient cycling. All the nutrients are decomposition, they are converted into simpler form, and the nutrients are given back to the soil, which can be taken again by the plants, and the production will again start, productivity will be starting again. Okay, so this is the basics components of what? The ecosystem. The first is productivity, producing food by the mainly plants, to some extent consumers also. And the second one is energy flow, how is the energy which is prepared by the plants is transferred to the others, and thereafter you are having what? Decomposition, and then what? You are having nutrient cycling. So these are the 4 basic components of an ecosystem. Clear? Now we are moving on to the term called as what? Productivity. Productivity, when you are seeing, the one who is responsible for this productivity, I have told you that it is solar energy. Okay, so food is being prepared with the help of main raw material, one of the main raw material, which is called as what? Solar energy. Okay, so the solar energy is the basic requirement for the ecosystem to function and sustain, right? Now, what is primary production? Plant is making food through photosynthesis, and the organic content is made. That organic content we call it as biomass. What do we call them? Biomass. So plant जो food बना रहा है photosynthesis में, वो जो organic content बना रहा है, उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? उसको हम बोलते हैं biomass. Clear? So this is the food which has been prepared by plants during photosynthesis. उसको हम बोलते हैं primary production. What do we call them? The biomass को हम क्या बोलते हैं? It's called as primary production. और इसको कैसे express किया जाता है? Weight के हिसाब से. How can I calculate a biomass? How much is produced? By just calculating its weight, isn't it? नहीं तो इतना मीटर स्क्वायर में, so imagine a tree के इतने मीटर स्क्वायर में उसका बायोमास कितना हुआ है? ग्राम पर, that is gram, otherwise we call it as kilocalories. How much amount of इस बायोमास से मुझे ऑक्सीडाइज करने से कितना एनर्जी मुझे मिलेगा? सो एनर्जी का यूनिट यहाँ पे क्या आ गया? किलो कैलोरीज. व्हाट डू वी कॉल दिस वन? किलो कैलोरीज. ओके, सो आइदर वी कैन एक्सप्रेस इट एज ग्राम्स, कितना मिल रहा है बायोमास, नहीं तो वो बायोमास से कितना एनर्जी, कितना कैलोरीज प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है, उसके हिसाब से भी हम यूनिट दे सकते हैं. सो इट कैन बी आइदर वेट पर ग्राम, square, or it can be kilocalories per meter square. Okay, so this is the thing. What is productivity? अब रेट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन ऑफ बायोमास मतलब एक साल में या 2 साल में या 10 साल में टाइम लिमिट दे दिया तो उसको हम बोलते हैं प्रोडक्टिविटी. व्हाट डू वी कॉल देम? प्रोडक्टिविटी. सो उसको टाइम लिमिट भी आ जाता है. तो व्हाट एंड ऑल विल बी प्रेजेंट, यू कैन फाइंड in case of these productivity along with the primary production, you are also having what? You are also having specifying the time duration. Okay, so it will be gram per year or kilocalories per meter square per year. Okay, so this will be the unit for what? Unit for primary production or primary productivity. Clear? And this productivity can also be divided into two. Primary productivity can be divided into how many types? 2 types. So what are the 2 types? One is gross primary productivity and the second one is net primary productivity. Okay, so what do you mean by gross and net? Gross मतलब पूरा कितना प्लांट्स बना रहा है फोटोसिंथेसिस में, उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? ग्रॉस. हाउ मच अमाउंट ऑफ फूड इज बीइंग प्रिपेयर्ड, ऑर्गेनिक मैटर और बायोमास इज प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय द प्लांट्स ड्यूरिंग अ स्पेसिफाइड टाइम, दैट वन वी कॉल इट एज व्हाट? वी कॉल देम एज ग्रॉस प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी. ओके, in this what food they are making, the plant will not use all the food themselves. Okay, some amount of food will be used by themselves, वो भी use करेगा for respiration. Okay, why? They need also energy for carrying out various purposes, isn't it? The whole food will not be utilized, cannot be transferred from one trophic level to another. Some of the food they will be utilizing it for themselves. Why? Because they need energy. So for that respiration has to be carried out. So if you are deducting totally कितना मिल रहा है primary production, in that if you are minusing, means if you are just excluding respiratory loss, you will get what? Net primary productivity. So gross primary productivity क्या है? How much they are producing, the whole production we call it as what? Gross primary productivity. After this, the whole thing cannot be transferred from grass to grasshopper to frog, it cannot be transferred. Some amount of energy only will be transferred. Then what is happening to the rest of the energy? When you ask, the plant is utilizing themselves for carrying out various purpose, and for that how they are getting energy? They are getting out of respiration. Okay, so respiratory losses will be there. So after reducing the respiratory loss, the amount of productivity what we have is called as what? The plant have is called as net primary productivity. Clear? So gross primary productivity during photosynthesis, what is produced is called as what? Gross, GPP. A considerate is used for what? By plants for respiration. So what is net primary productivity? Available biomass for consumption to the heterotrophs. वो respiration के use करने के बाद जो बचा रहता है അവർ യൂസ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ബാക്കി എന്തുണ്ടോ അതാണ് നമ്മളുടെ നെറ്റ് പ്രൈമറി പ്രൊഡക്ടിവിറ്റി, വിച്ച് വിൽ ബി ഗോയിങ് ടു ദ നെക്സ്റ്റ് ട്രോപ്പിക് ലെവൽ. അവർ എടുത്തിട്ട് അവരുടെ പണി കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ബാക്കി തരുന്നത്. ओके, वो अपने काम करने के बाद जो बाकी रहता है उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? वी कॉल देम एज net primary productivity. So we can say that NPP is equal to GPP minus respiratory loss. Okay, GPP is what? Gross primary productivity minus respiratory loss is called as what? NPP, that is net primary productivity. Okay, now the last point is what is secondary productivity. So secondary productivity means the production made by consumers. We are also producing, isn't it, some food. Like I am not growing just like that. I am building protein, I am building glycogen, I am building carbohydrates and all in my food. I am taking simplest form of food from the plants. Thereafter it is going into my body. My cells are growing, cells are dividing. In these cells and all, what is produced? The food is being stored in the form of protein, in the form of fats, in the form of carbohydrates. Food is new organic matters are produced and stored by myself. Okay, so I am also having some biomass. That production of biomass by consumers, we call it as what? We call them as secondary productivity. Okay, so what is secondary productivity? Rate of formation of new organic matter by consumers, we call it as what? Secondary productivity. Hope that is clear with them. So primary productivity plants का है, secondary productivity consumers, animals. Okay, primary productivity is of 2 types, gross and net, and secondary productivity consumers what they are making, that one we call it as what? Secondary productivity. Clear? So with this productivity is done. Now primary productivity is not same throughout the earth space. You can find in the earth different places production is different. ट्रॉपिकल रेन फॉरेस्ट में कितना प्रोडक्टिविटी है वो ही डेजर्ट में नहीं रहेगा. हाउ मच प्रोडक्शन यू आर हैविंग इन ट्रॉपिकल रेन फॉरेस्ट, द सेम यू विल नॉट बी हैविंग इट वेयर, यू विल नॉट बी हैविंग इट इन द डेजर्ट. सो किसके ऊपर निर्भर है? इन व्हाट फैक्टर्स डज दिस प्राइमरी प्रोडक्ट डिपेंड अपॉन? That's a question, isn't it? So this also usually they used to ask, so you have to note that. First is plant species inhabiting the area. If it is big trees, obviously the production will be more, isn't it? Small means the production will be less. Desert, the production will be less because it's a species which is depending. Some can produce much amount of food because their photosynthetic capacity of the plant is more. They are having high photosynthetic efficiency. Some plants do have, okay. So they can prepare much amount of food compared to others. Then obviously the primary production of those plants will be more when the photosynthetic capacity is more. When the plant species inhabiting the area is good, production will be more, okay. Next is availability of nutrients. Nutrients play a major role because in order to make protein, carbohydrate, fats, everything, what is needed? Nutrients is needed. If the soil is not rich in nutrients, production will be less, okay. So that is the next factor. And the last factor is environmental factors. Proper sunlight should be there, proper water should be there, proper temperature should be there, isn't it? So if all these factors, abiotic factors are present, soil should be in good condition. All these factors also play a major role in what? Primary production. So primary productivity depends on plant, what is found there. Some plants, they will be producing much amount of biomass because their photosynthetic efficiency is good. Second, when you are seeing nutrients availability, and the third, when you are coming to, it is environmental factors, climatic factors, which is favoring sunlight, which is available to the plants. All these factors also play a major role in what? Production. Clear? So with this, production is over. You can just see annual net primary productivity of the whole biosphere is what? 170 billion tons, okay. Annual, in a year, this much is produced. But ocean, you know, in spite of occupying 70% of the earth's surface is occupied by ocean, they are only contributing to how much billion tons? 55. The rest all are terrestrial ecosystem which is contributing to the same. So this is again a general information which you guys have to note it down. For one words it can be, okay. So with this, production is over. Next we will be discussing about decomposition. So next topic what we are going to discuss is decomposition, okay. So what is decomposition? You know what is decomposition. So complex substances are broken down into simpler forms by microbes. We call it as what? We call it as decomposition. Clear? So complex substance means the dead decaying matters. So what is the dead decaying matters called? The dead decaying matters of plants as well as animals, flora and fauna, is called as detritus. Usko kya bolte hain hum? Detritus, theek hai. So detritus, you can see the term, that is what we call it as what? The raw material which is needed for decomposition. And during decomposition, actually what is taking place? Complex substances, organic matters are broken down into simpler inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water and many nutrients. That process we call it as what? Decomposition, okay. And it requires a lot of oxygen. Oxidation process has to take place, so oxygen consuming process it is, okay. So decomposition जो होता है, हम sewage treatment plant में पढ़ चुके हैं. So for decomposition to take place, they demand oxygen. They demand what? They demand oxygen, okay. So that you have to remember. And what is detritus? As I said you, the dead parts of plants and animals, we call it as what? The detritus. Clear? So the examples you can see the pictures has been given of the detritus, right? Now we are moving on to the what are the different steps in decomposition. Clear? So the first steps is fragmentation, the second is leaching, third is catabolism, fourth is humification, and the fifth one is mineralization. So one by one we will see, okay. What is the first step? Fragmentation. Fragmentation का मतलब क्या है? When you see these detrivores are organisms which eat on this detritus, that is the dead decaying parts. Earthworm is one of the main detrivores. So वो क्या करता है? What they do? They break down the complex leaf litters, animal waste, everything into small pieces, into different fragments. So these smaller particles, fragments, that process we call it as what? Fragmentation. जहाँ पे detritus जो होता है is somewhat complex in nature, is broken down into small pieces, small particles. Clear? So small particles are nothing but the fragments. So the name is called as what? Fragmentation. And earthworm plays a major role in this process called as what? Fragmentation. टुकड़ा कर देता है. They will be making them into very small pieces, somewhat microscopic, some macroscopic forms, okay. The next is what? Leaching. What is the next one? Leaching. Now what happens is that when we apply water, okay, decomposes, or when the rain is there or the water is there, when we are irrigating, actually what is happening? These detritus which has been converted into fragments, some powders and all will be there. So when water is being mixed into that, actually what happens is that some of the nutrient soluble materials are present in that detritus. वो क्या हो जाता है, that will be mixing along with the water, and slowly they will be percolating through the soil, and they will reach underneath the earth surface to many layers of the soil. They will be reaching very much low. Okay, so when they are reaching down, it cannot be taken by the roots of the plants. You can see the arrow. The first, the roots can take it, the nutrients. The second arrow, when you are seeing, it has gone a bit down. Roots वहाँ तक पहुँचा नहीं है. It has, roots has not reached. When it goes deep underneath, what will happen? It is unavailable soil. Some of the soils will remain as what? Unavailable. Inorganic substance will be going underneath, and they will remain as what? Unavailable salt. So this process we call it as what? Leaching. What is this process called? Leaching. In decomposition, they are not playing that major role, but anyhow this water is playing a major role because they are helping in mixing up the particles. Okay, so some of the soluble inorganic nutrients go down into the soil horizon and there they will form precipitate as was unavailable salt. But the big trees are there, they can take this salt. Okay, otherwise it is very difficult for them to take because it's much deep inside. So this process we call it as leaching. So the first process क्या हुआ था, बड़े detritus को छोटा छोटा fragments किया. Fragments करने के बाद when water was added to it, the water, when you are seeing the rain or irrigation water, when it was applied, some of these soluble substances get solubilized in water, and they were just percolating and going down the soil horizon, and this process we call it as what? Leaching, in which they are present there as unavailable salts. The next process is called as catabolism. Listen, catabolism, what is happening is that here the powder substances, the small particles are more broken down, okay, into simpler inorganic form. यहाँ पे कौन आ रहा है? Bacteria and fungi. Who is coming? Bacteria and fungi are playing a major role. They are secreting some enzymes. So it is enzymatic process. Okay, they are secreting some enzymes by which they are digesting this स्मॉलर पार्टिकल्स, फ्रैगमेंट्स को क्या करता है, वो लोग डाइजेस्ट करके फ्रैगमेंट्स को बहुत ही जैसा क्या बोलते हैं, न्यूट्रिएंट जैसा, मीन्स पाउडर्स जैसा बना देते. सो दिस सब पाउडर्स वी कॉल इट एज अ सिंपल इनऑर्गेनिक सब्सटेंसेस. इट इज बीन डन बाय whom? By the action of the enzymes produced by bacteria and fungi. So bacteria and fungi are the main decomposers, right? So they are decomposing and breaking down the complex simpler substances into more simpler inorganic substances, and it is being done by whom? The bacteria and fungi, with the help of the enzyme secreted by them. Okay, so this process we call it as what? Catabolism. So first fragmentation, chota pieces. Second, leaching, some soluble substances went down. Third, catabolism, the particles which were present on the top were broken down into more smaller particles by the action of bacteria and fungi by secreting some enzymes. Then the next process is humification. यहाँ पे क्या हो जाता है? Bacteria and fungi will decompose, and this decomposers will be carried out, all the moisture and all they will be absorbing, they will be decomposing, and it will be converted into a dark amorphous a black color substance. That black color dark amorphous accumulation of these detritus we call it as humus. उसको हम बोलते हैं humus, जो highly resistant है. It is very much resistant to microbes. Microbes when you see काउडंग में, नहीं तो वेट जो डिब्रीज होता है, डेट्रिटस होता है, वेट डेट्रिटस में ग्रो होता है. लेकिन ह्यूमस में, when you are seeing humus, the microbes will not grow because they are highly resistant to what? Microbial action, because they have decomposed everything, and these substances are already the simple substance which cannot be decomposed more. So what is happening is that you can find this is highly safe for using because it's already in simple form, more digestion, more action cannot be taken place. So this conversion into dark amorphous substance, that process, humus formation, is called as what? Humification. Accumulation of humus in soil is called as what? Humification. Diagram you can see, this is humus, which usually we use it as a manure. We are using it as a manure. Okay. It serves as a reservoir of nutrients because this humus, when you are seeing this humus, again when you can find, they to some extent they will be at last slowly their humus will be degraded and they will be releasing some inorganic substances into the soil. These inorganic substances are nothing but minerals. What are these substances called? Minerals. And these are done by special microbes. I told you most of the microbes cannot digest humus. So this humus has to be digested. It is being done by special microbes, and these microbes convert this humus into inorganic substances and release it in the soil in the form of nutrients, in the form of what? Inorganic nutrients. This process we call it as what? Mineralization. Clear? So what is the first process? The first process was fragmentation, जहाँ पे बड़ा बड़ा detritus छोटा छोटा टुकड़ा हुआ. Big detritus were converted into small. Then water was there. Some of the soluble substances went down the soil horizon, leaching. Third, catabolism. Now when you are seeing what is happening, these small fragments were broken down much by action of bacteria and fungi, by the enzymes. Then again that was digested into simple inorganic substances. Now these simple inorganic substances were acted upon by microbes, and it was converted into dark, amorphous, solid structures called as what? Humus, which is highly resistant to microbes. Okay. This humus was again degraded by some special microbes, and they were converted into nutrients, inorganic nutrients, which we call it as minerals. Like that, minerals were dispersed in the soil. That minerals again plant took, again productivity started. Okay. So this process we call it as what? Decomposition, which are the 5 steps in decomposition. Very important question. Yeah. So diagrammatic representation has been given. You can go through. Leaf partially consumed by decomposed such as fungi, bacteria and all. You can find the leaves when it is falling down, gradually they are being taken up. At last organic rich soil they are forming, then inorganic substances are getting released. Okay. So this is just diagrammatic representation which you can go through. Now what are the factors which influence decomposition? Decomposition will happen first, fast or slow. It depends upon some factors. Okay. So when will the decomposition will take place? Faster. And when will the decomposition takes place? Slower. Listen carefully. One is chemical composition is determining. If a substance, detritus, is made up of some substances like lignin, chitin, which is very hard in nature, then decomposition will take time. Okay. It will be very slow, because the detritus is having lignin, chitin or chitin, whatever you call. So that is harder substances, harder chemical compounds. So to break down them, it will take time. So the decomposition will be slow. But if it is like animals, when it comes to us and all, when you are seeing, we are not having that many things. So we are having like nitrogenous substances, sugar substances. If the detritus is rich in, then it can be easily digested very fast, because they are having a very soft chemical structures. Okay. So it is quicker. If it is made up of nitrogen or if it is made up of sugar, then the digestion will be taking place faster. Okay. Decomposition will be taking place faster. If it is made up of harder substance, slow, like lignin and chitin. If it is made up of nitrogen and sugar, the decomposition will be fast. Then climatic factors and the soil moisture, what is present in the water, the temperature also determines decomposition. You see, warm, moist environment, they will be favoring what? Decomposition. Come on, decompose hote jao. Okay, they will be favoring. But at the same temperature, in order to prevent decomposition, what we do? We used to keep it in the fridges and in the fridge and all, we will be keeping it. Why? Decomposition should not take place. I have to eat that one sambar or one curry for 2-3 days, because I have made it very difficult, taken time, and I have made it. So I cannot spoil it, isn't it? If I keep it outside, decomposition will take place, warm and moist. But when it is low temperature and anaerobic condition, anaerobic means oxygen is not there, at that time you can find decomposition will be taking place very less. Okay. So these are some of the factors which will be affecting what? Decomposition. The next topic will be energy flow. But with this I stop for today. So have a very nice day. Thank you. Bye bye.